Peace and blessings, family. It's Brother IJ Taimba, your empowerment coach, educator, and author, and community organizer. And you are at the WUCUSU Empowerment YouTube channel. And just to be clear, for those who don't know, if you're watching live, if you're watching in a later recorded version, the WUCUSU Empowerment channel is dedicated to providing the information, the techniques, the tools, the inspiration to help people on their self-empowerment journey. This particular channel won't spend a lot of time talking about what the enemy's doing and how upset we are. And this channel is about what do we as individuals need to be doing to get our acts together, to get our minds right and our bodies right and our spirits right, such that we can manifest and create the world we want to create, so that most of our time is spent on us, not on them, whoever them is to you, right? Now, today, family, we got, I just want you to know, I am blessed to somehow get in touch with some of our, like, really good, solid brothers and sisters, man, in different capacities. This elder here, this Baba here, hit me up out the blue one day to want me to review a forthcoming book and kind of give my point of view on it. So we kind of been in and out of touch. And when I was thinking about this issue of self-empowerment, how wide and broad that umbrella is, that encompasses a lot, right? The things we can do to get ourselves right. I said, man, I got to do something that deals with something like yoga. And I said, wait a minute, that brother, the elder, he does yoga. So we got in touch. It's funny how things work. And I told him, we were on the phone the other day. I said, man, Baba, I'm so glad you reached out to me to review your book, because I met you now, and now you're in we're in each other's orbit, and I have a funny feeling that I'm going to learn a lot from this brother. I really do, based on our conversations. Now, widely known as, quote, the old man, Baba Atiba Omar is an abolitionist who coincidentally stumbled upon the art of abolition, yoga. For almost 50 years, family, that is 5 decades, half a century, he studied like a monk and practiced like a Zulu warrior. Thus, the yoga he teaches is comprehensive, it's elegant, powerful, highly intelligent, spiritual enough to laugh at itself, informed enough to be uncompromisingly political. He calls his multidisciplinary style Kamenu, yoga with its boots on the ground. For this broadcast, because this is a self-empowerment channel, he's going to be helping us understand how yoga, especially his unique expression of yoga, is a very legitimate vehicle that we can use for those of us who are sincerely trying to empower ourselves, right? So I want to bring on to the broadcast our good brother Baba Atiba. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well, brother. How are you?
Hey, man, I'm blessed. I'm so glad you're here. I'm very excited about this broadcast. And what I believe you will offer and what people will get from this, the energy of it and what the real information people will get. I want to start with, I guess, let me start with this comment. I see a comment. Oh, that's my queen. She's giving a greetings, WUCUSU, to the family. We know WUCUSU's our acronym for Wake Up, Clean Up, Stand Up. Thank you to the queen. And by the way, family, she's going to have her own YouTube channel and YouTube series coming out called The Gray Area, in which she's going to be kind of doing programming that speaks to those of us middle-aged and older, thus the gray area, right? And talking about don't give up because you're getting older. Like, yeah, you could pivot and start a whole new chapter of your life. We have a lot to offer. So we really are looking forward to that. At some point, I'm going to be putting up the link to join her Facebook group, where she'll tell you more about forthcoming shows. That said, Baba Atiba, I wanted to start now. You have lived a very full life. You've done quite a few very important things from what I know. You've lived through some important and participated in some important organizations and movements. So going from the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths, Peace to the Gods, to the Black Panther Party. Now you practice and you're teaching yoga. You've done that for several decades. can you? I know that this is a broad question for you, but if you were to give us your elevator pitch, your 3 minute elevator, your 3 to 5 minute elevator pitch on walking us through some of those experiences as a younger man, and kind of help us understand how those experiences have shaped who Baba Atiba Omar is today, and ultimately how it led to your own kind of path through this Kemenu yoga. I know that's a tall order, it's a lot to that, but let's take a good 5 minutes and just kind of tell us who you are so people know who we're dealing with right here.
Thank you. Let me say that it's a privilege to be in your space and on this platform. I appreciate you and what you're doing immensely. I have to say again to whoever's listening that you are in an institution, and I'm just very grateful to know you. So I kind of lucked out. I was born during the time when not just my community or our community or this nation, but the entire world was in the midst of revolutionary consciousness. In fact, I know that this program, this platform is devoted to self-empowerment and focus on the individual, and as opposed to us in the context of our struggle for racial justice, political justice, and what have you. But I have to say, man, that I was born during a time when there was just widespread consciousness, political consciousness, so much so that we knew that what we were struggling for was human rights. In fact, that's what we called our effort, the Black Human Rights Movement. It was rebranded, of course, the civil rights movements by those who wanted to have a tamer, more domestic narrative. But we were conscious enough to know that we were struggling for our human rights. And it wasn't just a trend. You know, everybody was suffering during that time. There were, of course, exceptions. We always rise above the moment, no matter how severe or oppressive. This is what we do. Nonetheless, the majority of our people worldwide were suffering. It's hard for a lot of folks today to really get an understanding of that, man. We have so many creatures comforts, so many opportunities, zuzus and wham whams, that we don't really appreciate, man, how drastic, how severe, how acute our suffering was during the time. I came up during the 60s, early 60s and 70s. So in any case, so it was almost inevitable that if you were a living, breathing Black person during the 60s and 70s, you joined the organization. You know, it was like scandalous if you were not. So I joined the 5% first. That's what the nation of gods and earth was calling itself at that time. And I think that was 60, 66, 67. I don't quite remember. Then later on, in fact, it happened just by happenstance. I was Nostrand Avenue. I was living in Brooklyn, and I was with some of my friends, and we walked past the Black Panther Party headquarters on Nostrand Avenue, and we talked about, said, yeah, let's go in there. And somebody said, no, but we're 5%ers. And then we decided we could be 5%ers and Panthers, right? So we went in and joined. It was really a nominal involvement. I mean, I was aware later of what the Panthers really were, but that time it was just another cool thing to do. Later on, of course, you know, I matured. I got more actively involved in what the Black Panthers evolved into. That was really a support committee. Let me emphasize, a support committee for the Black Liberation Army. I had the great pleasure, the great fortune of being imprisoned when I was 19. And before I was sentenced, that was sometime 2 or 3 later after I was first arrested, I was in Rikers Island. And during that time, there were only 8 cell blocks. Today they have a gazillion housing units on Rikers Island. During that time, there were only 8 cell blocks. One of the cell blocks was called 1B. And in that cell block, it was isolated. They housed all of the revolutionaries, the Torres brothers, Gabriel and Francisco Torres, the New York Five, Herman Bell, Noah Washington, the founder of the BLA, Chango Career, all of the soldiers, the warriors, those who are struggling for human rights, black human rights and justice. When they were captured in New York, that's where they were. They took me in their wing. That was my transformative period, Again, I had political consciousness and racial consciousness because I was just lucky to be born into that era. In fact, my mother was a community organizer before the term community organizer came into vogue. I like to say about that, to the extent that I indulge in wishes, I don't really because it's so empty and futile, but just for the sake of communicating what my thoughts are, I wish I would have seen her for what she was then. I didn't have eyes to see her then. It's only later I appreciated, wow, I think that's a good takeaway for all of us, to really look at our elders and our parents, our family members, and take a moment to really assess them like we're spectators and not, related to them, so we can really appreciate just the value.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so that's assessing my matrix. As I got older, I got involved in every organization that was active at the time. The Nubian Brotherhoods and the Sunrise Collective. I was a staff writer for the Freedom Press with Catherine Gary. We were really active out in Long Island, doing a lot of work around housing. We used to go, to community board meetings and just get people to swarm there so we get the right kind of local legislation passed, So I've done a great deal. Qualified, because we look at the state that we're in now. Who can lay claim to having done anything, right? But I've been involved in a lot of efforts on both sides of the wall. In prison, I organized strikes, protests. I had some legislation passed by challenging the prison authorities through federal civil rights movements or civil rights legislation.
Baba, forgive
Yeah.
me. I want to interrupt you very quick to just expound on what you're saying for those watching. So this channel is about self-empowerment, but be real clear that there is no, in the African context, there is no self-empowerment without community or village empowerment. So when Baba's breaking down these different organizations and he got legislation done and they're doing with housing, that's complete part and parcel self-empowerment. They're helping people to fight for themselves, to exercise their voice, right? To I guess you might say engage the system. So yeah, we appreciate all that. And I don't want anyone watching to think that these two are separate. They're actually
Indeed.
one and the same. So thank you for that. Yeah, that clarification.
Indeed. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much because, of course, there is a distinct difference between that kind of activism and individually focused self-empowerment. But you're really absolutely correct, man. They're inseparable. In fact, when I think of self-empowerment during that time, nobody was thinking about cultivating his or her own individual self. We saw that our empowerment was through the upliftment of the whole, Yeah. And so let me conclude this response by saying that later influenced my forming of what I came to call Kemetu Yoga, the um, the racial necessity that just was part of my conspicuously confronted me during my time. Today, there's like these veils, these insulations between us and the racial reality that is really prevalent. So we don't see that it's always a factor. That race is a factor in everything that happens. When I was coming up, it was clear, it was clear and it was embedded in my bones. And so when I engaged in anything, yoga being among them, that consciousness infused itself into my practice, my teaching.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that, Baba. I want to, as a follow up, I wanted to know, a lot of times, man, we've been miseducated, Bob, as you know. So we hear something and we have this word association, right? So we hear yoga. The average black man, woman thinks of Indian people. They think of some incense burning, somebody in a certain type of outfit, stretching and contorting their bodies in very difficult positions. But you know firsthand that yoga is a lot more sophisticated, complex, and significant than the way we may envision it, right? At least those of us who are not practitioners or scholars of it. Could you help people understand the dimensions of yoga that we may not necessarily think of when we hear the word yoga? What does yoga mean to you? What has it done for you? And, that type of thing.
Well, it's transformed my life.
Mm.
That's just it. But that was possible only because I had, as you were suggesting, a more accurate and comprehensive understanding of what yoga is. So we know absolutely that all human life, without exception, originated in Africa. Everywhere else we see human life, we know that it migrated, wherever it is. People talk about being indigenous to North America, and to an extent that's true. Indigenous meaning that they were the first people native here to this hemisphere. Okay, but being indigenous and being, how do you say, originating, different. So all human life, no matter where you see it, originated in Africa and migrated. The Indus Valley is not an exception. There's so much medical, scientific, archaeological, linguistic, botanical evidence beyond question that shows absolutely that the people who migrated to the Indus Valley in that area that became known as India absolutely came from the Nile Valley, what was called in ancient times Punt. You have an amalgam, um, a convergence of ethnicities, the present day Somalis, the Ethiopians, of course, the people we call ancient Egyptians, Sudanese, Nubians, all these people converged. And I have some theories about why, but the fact is that, to answer your question, they migrated to the Indus Valley, and in a relatively short time, were able to establish a very elaborate civilization. In fact, the reason they were able to do that is because they didn't have to start from scratch. They had the blueprint for civilization because that's where they came from. They came from places where civilization had already been established and elaborated. So the reason this is important is because when we look at yoga, we tend to think of it, as you say, Indian. something foreign to us, you know? But the fact is that it's not only the people that migrated from the Nile Valley, it's also the philosophy, the spirituality, the culture, and among other things, the practice of yoga. The earliest known depictions of yoga in the Indus Valley are about 6,000 years old. This is the most famous is the man with the broad head, and he's sitting in a lotus posture. He has the head of a bull, right? Okay, but you have hieroglyphs in ancient Egypt that predate that by some thousands of years, you know? Now, we have to remember that the chronology that Egyptologist, which really means white man, the chronology they offer about ancient Egypt is self-serving. For example, they maintain that the Sphinx is 3 to 4,000 years old, whereas the refurbishments on the Sphinx have been determined to be at least 9,000 years old. You know, so the math doesn't add up. So I'm saying that it's important to not make assessments based on the chronology of Eurocentric so-called Egyptology, because we get the wrong impressions every time. The fact is that the earliest depictions of yoga postures, in fact, you mentioned my book, I have some illustrations in there that show this. The earliest depictions of yoga postures come from ancient Chem. But more importantly, the philosophy of yoga is identical to the philosophy that we find in ancient Chem. So I think you mentioned Sheikh Anta Diop. If you didn't mention him here, I know we came up in a discussion we had. As you know that, Noah, I don't know if your listeners are aware, Sheikh Anta Diop was a multi-genius.
Yes, he was.
A linguist, a chemist, astrophysicist, a physicist. I mean, he was a multi-genius. The only reason we don't know, or most people don't know his name, is because he's black, you know, but he's really surpasses Einstein. In fact, refuted some of Einstein's theories, which were dismissed at the time. But in any case, Sheikh Anta Diop was a multi-genius. In fact, I remember reading his magnum opus, Civilization or Barbarism. It was about the third or fourth time that I read it. Still don't understand some of it, right? You know, but it's you get something more every time. And I remember on one occasion I thought, man, this cat is the reincarnation of Imhotep, right?
I was just thinking that. I was just thinking that. Yes.
And yo,
Yeah.
and listen, bro, it's not just you. I read I think it was Jacob Carruthers said the same thing. I read also I'm pretty sure it's John Henry Clark. Independently, they said the same thing, you know, just a venerable, just a superlative, magnificent giant being he was, right? Okay, so we know then that he is an authority that we could give some credence, we could credit, you know, we could trust. And one of the things he did was to show in one of his works, The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, that all of African civilization, all of African culture derived from the same sources and are just different expressions of one source, right? So we look at the religious or spiritual depictions in ancient Egypt, and they're so fascinating and glamorous, you know, and it's so attractive to us, right? What we often don't realize is that all these magnificent depictions are representations that are embodiments of forces, you know? In fact, the word nature derives, as you may know, from neter, which means nature, force of nature, and that's what Alsa or Alcid or Osiris or Ra, whoever else, that's what they were. They're nature, neters, right? Forces of nature. And they embodied exactly the same principles according to, well, not just Gio. As far as I know, he may have been the first to make this analysis, but he was not the last. That the spirituality that we see in ancient Egypt was passed on to ancient India, and this is so important for us in our quest to really make use of yoga, is exactly the same spirituality that you see from the Dogon, even the Ife. They seem like superficially very different. The Batwa in the south of Africa, all of the spiritual traditions or the spirituality that exists in Africa that was not imposed. That we can make cases for Islam and Christianity also being of African origin, but they diverge from, say, the root, so that we can say with some accuracy that Christianity and Islam, wherever their origins, are not indigenous African spiritual traditions.
Baba,
And
I'm
so,
sorry. Let me interject here very quickly because you did a very good job of really cementing the historical origins to let people know that this thing we all associate with India, and we're not going to rob India of its contribution to yoga, but people do need to know where it started. So you did a magnificent job of that. I'm hoping that you can help us understand because I came up and playing football, and we in the weight room, and we doing all. And when I think about Western ideas of fitness versus Eastern ideas, I think they tend to there's a separation. So you in the gym, you throwing up all types of metal, you're not getting closer to the Most High. You're not reflecting on who you are, discovering who your true self is. You're not elevating consciousness. You're just throwing up metal and getting physically stronger. But yoga is a lot different from that sort of modality. Could you explain how yoga isn't just about you get real flexible and but it does all these different things in one for people who don't know, please?
absolutely, and I will endeavor to be brief. I do want to conclude though, when I say that yoga originated in the Nile Valley, and all of the religious spiritual traditions of Africa are fundamentally the same in very substantive ways. So we look at the philosophy that was in the Nile Valley, ancient Egypt, that passed on to the Indus Valley. It migrated after that in very ancient times all throughout the world. And the beauty of that is that when it migrated, say, to Tibet or to Japan or to China or all throughout Southeast Asia, and even here to the North America with the indigenous people who have the same beliefs as others spiritualists throughout the world, you're looking at African spirituality in different guises. And so to conclude this very important takeaway, when you look at, say, Zen Buddhism or Taoism or Sufism or any of these other so-called Eastern spiritual traditions, we're looking at our own Black spirituality just rebranded. So the Yoga Sutras is the Bible of yoga. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. I like to ask people, my students, what the most famous equation in the world is. Even if you don't know what it means, could you tell me now, Bob? What's the most famous equation in the world? Even if you don't know what it
E
means.
equals MC squared.
E equals MC squared. That's exactly right. And of course, it means energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Energy, of course, is really everything, right? So everything that exists in the material universe, maybe in the non-material universe, that's another story, equals mass times the speed of light squared. Now, this was a proposition or an equation that was put forth by Einstein, 1930s, I believe, and it's been validated. It's no longer theory. So this is important for us, again, because we have to know what is reliable truth, what's a reliable source of authority. Okay, so if we unpack that equation just very quickly, energy is clear. It equals, on the other side of the equation, mass. Okay, that's clear. The speed of light. Now that's a little contrived, because in that, the speed of light, what you really have is the rate of motion of light. You can say, substitute that term and still be correct, right? It's not speed so much. Speed is reducible to another quantity, which is motion. Just had to be a fast motion, right? And then, of course, you have light, and then you have a multiplication of light. But the three constituent elements of that equation are mass, motion, and light. Energy equals mass, motion, and light. So what does Patanjali, who is no doubt a black man, 5 perhaps 1,000 years ago, tell us in the Yoga Sutras? Now, let me say that there were other yoga books written before Patanjali, the Pradipika, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Upanishads, different stuff. But what Patanjali did was to condense in this very elegant, concise form, about 192 or 196 verses, depending on your translation, all of the strength and power and beauty, philosophy, science of yoga, very concise, very elegant verses. And what does he tell us, this little black man, 1,000 years before Einstein, without the benefit of any technology? He says in the Yoga Sutras, the universe consists of light, motion, and mass. Now that's astounding. That is astounding. How in the heck did he know that? Well, of course, there was some attunement that he had, but it wasn't just intellectual genius, but more. But the fact is that, let's say it was his intellectual genius alone, we know clearly that, damn, by God and Willicke, this guy knows some stuff. So perhaps his point of view is trustworthy. So what does he tell us in the second verse of the Yoga Sutras? The first verse is, and now the teaching of yoga begins. But whenever I recite that, even now, I always hear, and now the teaching of yoga begins, all this gravitas and weight, right? Because it's such a weighty subject. In any case, the second verse, and this answers your question very directly, Baba. The second verse is, yoga is the settling of the mind into silence. Yoga is the settling of the mind into silence. We use the body to exercise, cultivate the mind. We use the body, but not just. Like all the other verses that follow, very logical. So logical, man, it's easy to memorize, the sutras. They just build upon the preceding thought. Yoga is setting the mind in silence. When the mind is settled, we establish our central nature with unbounded consciousness. The unbounded consciousness is some type of stirred activity in the mind, et cetera, right? It's a very logical progression. And what we are seeing there is that, okay, Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutras, tells us first that yoga is a settling of the mind into silence. The other verses, they address a wide range of subjects: physics, astrophysics, biology, psychology, evolution, utter genius. To this day, all modern science is able to do is to marvel or corroborate, So this genius, Patanjali, who is able to address all these subjects, if you consider just say two, physics and astrophysics, just consider those two alone. Physics, of course, having to do all the material world around us, And astrophysics, of course, have to do with the above universe. That's everything. And so what Patanjali is showing us, Baba, is that everything that exists is for the purpose only of for us to cultivate our minds into silence.
Now, is that it sounds like that's synonymous with being in a meditative state when you say cultivate into silence?
Yeah, it is. It is that the goal for us is to live in a meditative state. Of course, it's very difficult to do because of how we're so constantly assailed by psychological, physical, cultural toxins. Something's always trying to distract and pull us away from rightness. But yes, that's the goal. Actually, that's just a return to ourselves, our ancestral selves. We see this now actually living and breathing with so many of these so-called primitive tribes, some of which are protective tribes, you know, that you cannot go into their areas in order to maintain the pristine conditions, culture, ways of life that they have. Those people live in a meditative state, man. Those people
Barbara,
live in truth.
I'm sorry. Let me ask you. I'm sorry because you know how it is with stimulating conversation. As you're talking, I'm listening, and it's bringing up more questions that are actually off the script of the questions I had prepared for you. But why, in your opinion, is it so important? Why were these ancestors so keen about silence? What's the importance of silence, particularly in the world we live in? But I'm thinking about even back then, they seem to be really big on silence and being centered. Could you help us understand that?
Indeed. So initially, I don't know if we were talking before the this broadcast began, but we were talking about alignment and how everything else falls into place when we align. So yoga means union, and the intention is for us to be united with the all, the one, the indescribable, the unnameable. You know. Now, gotta rewind this tape a little, man, because the reason this poses a kind of perplexity, perhaps, for some, is because our egos rebel from the idea, the idea of silence, because, or even oneness, when we think about oneness being the obliteration of ego, I mean, we just conditioned to be appalled and just rebelled, rebel from the idea. Because we have been trained to think that the thoughts in our head and the recognitions, the self-recognitions that we have as a result are us, and that this usness or this I-ness that accumulates is all important. And that once the I-ness is dissolved, then somehow the sanctity of our person has been just obliterated. That is a conditioning. In yoga, in other traditions as well, all of the so-called Eastern spiritual traditions, from Sufism to Jainism to Tantra, Naja, they all teach the same thing. There may be some exceptions somewhere, but I don't know about them. All of our African traditions as well, they teach us that we have these two egos. In yoga, one is called Asmita. Asmita, let's rewind. One is called Amhakara. And what this is, just very simply and quickly, is the ego of a baby. A baby comes into the world, a baby is just all awareness. That's it. Naked awareness, right? And then over time, the baby realizes or learns, if I make this noise, I get this response, And then something happens, oh, I like that. I don't like that. And now we have accumulation on that naked awareness. you know? Now the awareness never goes away, but what happens is it gets in a sense layered over by all of these sensory inputs. And over time, we think that all the sensory inputs are us, you know? We mistake or we perceive all the thoughts in my head, my likes, my dislikes, you know, that's me. My aspirations, which of course extend from my likes, that's me. Okay. But the reality is that the real us is the naked, the unadorned, uncluttered us. And when we say return to silence, we mean that to be in this world but not of it, to be able to invoke that state of naked awareness that's free of judgment, that's free of fear, that's free of desire, actually, that is completely content within itself. And then hit the switch and engage life. But it's in those moments that we do have this silence that we are most connected, that the all, the one is really most palpable in our lives. If you meditate, the more you get to silence, the more you can really experience the all is experiential, not just philosophical. You know, that only happens when we achieve silence in our minds. And let me conclude by saying silence in the mind and stillness in the body are two sides of one coin, you know? In fact, silence, stillness in the body is really a kind of silence. And silence in the mind is kind of stillness. That's the thing. We want the mind, body and mind to be like so, which is why it's so important when you meditate, be as still as possible, you know, because that helps to awaken the stillness in the mind, which is really silence. I don't know if I explained that, man.
I think I get it, Baba. I'm curious to know um it's what's implied here. And I've been doing a lot of studies on some of these things. I'm nowhere near expert on it. Let me say that. But it sounds like the implication is we should be more internal and less
Yeah.
external. Is
Yes,
that
yes, 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 yes. No, it took me 50 years to say what you just said in 2 minutes.
say
Yeah,
again?
it took me 50 years and like, well, I said 15 minutes to say what you said, right? Yeah, that's exactly right. Uh-huh. But the thing is, look, we have to resonate properly because if we are discordant, then the internal thing that we focus on, not good, you know? That's why it's so important to do what you're endeavoring to do, your channel and your efforts with this self-empowerment. You know, self-empowerment really means or requires wholeness, health, you know? And health, wholeness, healing requires having the right vibration, man. And then it's like an internal tuning fork, you know? We want the internal tuning fork to be right, the right pitch. Otherwise, what are we attuning ourselves to if it's discordant, you know? So, yes, it is a quest for internal self-sufficiency and contentment and alignment. Uh-huh.
This is very important. Those of you watching, first want to want to acknowledge a few people came on. We got my brother, born eternal Lord Allah. I'm assuming that's I should be saying peace to the God to that brother. Sound like he's down with the 5% Nation. We got brother down with my brotherhood, brother Daryl Aiken FM, known as Baba FM. He just did a wonderful broadcast for us, Baba, a live interview. We talked about the importance of Dr. Amos Wilson, and his group SBET is very they're actually teaching, sharing Dr. Wilson's teachings coming from his books and doing very important work. So we want to thank our brother Baba FM as well. You know, I can't help but think as you're talking, the vast difference between a Western cosmology or Western way of understanding. And I'm not beating up on the Western folks. We all inhabit the planet. I'm not on that. But it's important to see there's a vast difference in how we perceive the world and phenomena. It seemed like with them, it's about go get them. Fake it till you make it. Get your likes. Make sure you brand. Make sure you do this. Or we're grasping. We're trying to get. We're trying to get. We're trying to get. Whereas our folks are saying, first of all, shh, close your mouth for a minute. Cut all that off. Unplug all that. Get centered. Get quiet. And also, am I right, Baba? Does this also assume that our folks and maybe even the Indians that dealt with yoga later understood the Most High as not being this external thing, but maybe that when you go in, you're also going in having communion with that entity as well? Or am I misreading that?
Not at all, Baba. So it's important, of course, to not get stuck in boxes. This is one of the things that distinguishes people who are in accord, in harmony, from those who are not. And I mean, frankly, the Urugu, whatever you want to call those others, they like boxes. They like categories and little, labels and periods also. In fact, I have what I call the philosophy of the comma, that things are almost never this period. They're almost always this comma, And so what you say about the divine or the Most High, how we call it, being internal, that's correct. But it's not internal period, it's internal comma. And you touched on something very important also, man, that we do strive for this silence, but not silence period, but silence comma, because we are the people of music. We are the embodiment of music. I'm thinking then that in our earthly experience and activities, the silence means, of course, that we have moments of utter stillness and silence. We are spiritual people. We draw our strength from the spirit. And so to commune with that indescribable, unnameable one, then we endeavor to be below as he, she, it is above, So we want silence like that, but also we don't want irrelevant noise, It's not to say, again, rewind for a moment, like all other spiritual traditions, without exception, they use the words either discrimination or discernment. That when we cultivate clarity, then we're able to rightly discern and rightly discriminate, what's required in a moment. That's to say, we know when to hold them, when to fold them, right? So as regards not pertinent noise, I mean, sometimes you want some flourishes, You want some styles and rivers and boils on the noise you make, even though it may not be strictly or obviously spiritual. It's not like you have to be solemn only,
Right.
Yeah. So yes, we are in the chord. We have joy, and so sometimes our joy is audible. We laugh. We sing. But without excess. Let me say this also is a good measure, man. Like, you want things to be just so. My aunt is, of course, is one of the prime examples of this balance, which meaning not too much, not too little, just soness, right? So that we have stillness and sound in correct measure. you know, or silence
Mm,
and sound in correct measure, you
mm.
know.
Now, Bob, man, first of all, thanks for that. All of you who are watching live, you are getting a treat. I don't know if you appreciate the treat you're getting, but it's something Baba said earlier to make sure that the elders, and I would probably extend that to even some peers that we have in our lives, that we really appreciate them while we have them in this dimension. Far too often, some of our greatest, brightest, weren't really understood too well or appreciated or embraced until their death. And that's somewhat tragic because that means we missed out on all that they brought. So I hope that you're not making that mistake during this broadcast. I hope that you are really appreciating what is going on here and Baba's very eloquent way, I might add, of expressing it. Baba, you you actually told me that you actually met Father Allah.
I did.
Please
I
share that,
did.
just as an aside, share that story with us.
So I'm not sure what year it was, man, 66, 67. But I was a young 5%er, and my name was El San, right, at the time. Later on, I changed it as I evolved in the nation. But I remember once this older brother, I don't remember his name. We were talking, I was reciting some stuff, and he said, what the father said. And I said, now the father didn't see, I never saw the father. He said, you're not my A alike. You ain't even seen the father, right? So you got to see the father. I said, okay. So I snuck on the train. I don't know if it was that day or next day. I went down to the headquarters in the academy, we called it, in Harlem. Saw the father. I got my pen. You know, we were giving out pens at the time. They were sponsored by the mayor, Mayor Lindsay, John Lindsay. That's another story. But so I got my pen, saw the father. I told the father, I said, look, I don't have any money to get home. I took a chance coming down here, right? I didn't have any money to get home. And at that time, the subway fare was 10 cents. So I thought he would
Mm,
give me 10 cents. This
I'm
man
about to
gave me a
fall out
dollar.
my seat.
Woo-wee! That man gave me a dollar. Boy, oh boy. I
Wow.
love him. I loved him even more then, right? Cause that dollar,
Wow.
man, I got chips, I got candy, I got soda, and I had change,
Wow.
you know,
And got home.
and got home. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So that was
Now
my
you couldn't even get on the train for that dollar, let alone
right,
the chips and the candy.
right
Wow.
today. Yeah, yeah,
Wow. And
yeah. So I had that great pleasure, man. I like to say also, I have very little conscious conceit, you know. But one thing I'm very proud of is that I drank out of the same Kwanzaa bowl as John Henry Clark.
oh,
Yeah, I was
yeah,
at
one of our greats.
one of our greats. That was during the time when Namibia was still struggling for liberation, and so I was at this Kwanzaa party, Kwanzaa event at the house of an ambassador from Namibia, and John Henry Clark was there, and I did the stereotypical thing. I think I was like 28, man. I sat down at his feet. Literally, he was sitting in the armchair. I sat at his feet and I pestered him with questions. I know he was tired of me, but yeah, that was something I very, I cherish that memory.
Yeah, that's all right. Now I know that you have been through the 5% Nation Guys and Earths, came through the Panthers. Um, you mentioned that you spent some time behind the wall in the yard. I want to know what led you what how did you get to yoga, and then tell us more about your specific brand of yoga, Kaminu, as you tell that story too.
So, as I said, I came up during the era of the Black liberation movement, the Black human rights struggle. I was acutely conscious of just oppression and racial injustice without the political education or being politically educated, because every day was education. Racism just there. We're coming back to that now somewhat with Trump's campaign to make America Jim Crow again. And well, that's pretty much what I was experiencing. The tail end of Jim Crow, we did have some rights, some wins, so it wasn't as severe as what our people on the sharecroppers or during the 20s or the era when Jim Crow was at its height. It wasn't as severe, but still very brutal. So I went to prison and took that with me. Even though like the movement was somewhat dying, because we had won so much, everybody was celebrating, and that was one of our great eras. The whole world, the anti-colonial movements and the liberation movements elsewhere and against tyranny in Europe. You know, there was some movements for social justice there in Germany and Italy, elsewhere. And here in the United States, of course, we won a lot. And so people began to celebrate and just forget to struggle. But I was still carrying that torch. So I went to prison. I still had this mentality of us against them, period. And so a lot of confrontation. So I wanted to learn how to kick better. When I was young, my mother, when I think 13, she put me into karate school. I was studying Shotokan with George Cofield, the Empire Karate Club. I don't know if you ever heard. But he was one of the few, perhaps I think the only 9th degree black belt black man who's 9th degree black belt. So I studied under him and Tom the Puppet. But when I got in prison, you know, it was very difficult. And so I wanted to learn how to kick better, or I wanted my kicks to be better. And they say in martial art that stretching is the breath of kicking. And so I saw this one brother, he had this poster on his wall of this master, Vishnu Sivananda. And the brother told me, and the guy was doing some stretch. I said, man, that's what I'm looking for. And he said, this was in Attica, actually. And he said, man, just write them, they send you a book, because this was after I was in Attica. It was after the Attica Rebellion, about 5 years, 6 years afterwards. And we had won so many rights, so many rights. So one of the things that was wrong was the right to get literature. You know, you go to a library, it was like a Black History library, you know? I mean, we were getting it, man. So, and also we had access to just order just about any literature. I don't know if you're familiar with the Anarchist Cookbook. Have you heard of that? You know what that's about, right? When I was in prison, you could order that, man, and you can have it. But in any case, I had the complete illustrated book of yoga, and I just started practicing myself. And I was an atheist at the time, or I would say that, yeah, on a good day, when I'm feeling charitable, I'm agnostic. If not, I'm an atheist. That was my thoughts, you know. I had no idea, no conception, interest in spirituality. But this is the thing, man, that you use the body to cultivate the mind. Like you're right, when you throw weights, you're using the body. There is some cultivation that occurs. It's actually impossible for it not to happen. But it's slight and very indirect, because the activity, even though it's very strenuous, is very ordinary. But when you do yoga postures, you engage the body in ways that are just very extraordinary. You test ligaments and tendons in different parts of your central nervous system you don't even know you have. And so you get this extraordinary release and cultivation in your body, and that really impacts your mind very profoundly, strongly, directly. And so little by little, this consciousness awakened. And eventually I realized I did have some experiences I couldn't explain logically throughout my life, but I dismissed them. I endeavored to rationalize them, to just dismiss any spiritual connection. So there was that seedling experience that helped me to accept, to look at in a different light and accept the reality of spirit. And eventually, well, I saw the practice for what it is, that you use the body, you get great physical openness, your ligaments, tendons, muscles, all your respiratory system, cardiovascular system, everything got really, really well, your organs, every organ in your body gets exercise. So you get all that really good stuff physically, but there's something that happens more. And let me say that because this is an art form that originated with us, for us, the way that we respond to it, no other people have the same, and from what I've observed, it doesn't impact others as profoundly as it does us. So to conclude the answer to your question, how did I develop Kemetic yoga? I said that I had sat at the feet of John Henry Clark, and there's two things that I recall. Like he said a great deal. I asked him everything under the sun that I could think of, but there's these two general observations he shared that guide me all the time. One is that we cannot afford to be wrong. That when we allege something, there's so many forces that want to refute, as we see today, deny, refute our history, the truth of our reality, our experience. So whenever we allege something, we claim something, it has to be accurate. We cannot afford to give them those pretexts. See, you're wrong. So you're wrong over there. That other stuff is not true either. You dig? So that's one thing he said that stuck with me. The other thing he said was that everything, all the history, now, because I was flattering him, speaking from the heart, but he was saying how, in fact, it's kind of cliche. Now, he may have even said this in print. I'm sure he did, that we can see farther in effect because we stand on the shoulders of giants. So when I was in prison, as you said, man, I studied like a monk. I was able to get every book under the sun having to do with very great many books about yoga, spirituality, Eastern spirituality, Zen, all this other stuff, And I learned different systems. I learned Hatha, Ashtanga, Kundalini, some Kripalu, and also related systems, some Tai Chi, Qigong, Douyin, a bunch of stuff, And so I incorporated that, just synthesized it into one practice. And let me say, it is a progression of Kemetic yoga. The first African-centered yoga I was aware of in this country was Dr. Ma'ata Asbi's Egyptian yoga. And it was really fascinating. I read some of his books and I followed his system. But then I found some things were a little bit off, but it's okay because he was a pioneer. He did groundbreaking work. So inevitably, of course, he's going to get some things not quite right, Then came Kemetic yoga, which was a progression from Egyptian yoga, from I forget the brother's name. Alsa. I forget the brother's name. Forgive me. But in any case, he developed a system called Kemetic yoga. And both of these systems were right as far as it goes. But look what I said from the beginning, man, of how historically yoga, what we see in the Indus Valley, is part of our heritage. in Kemetic and Egyptian yoga, they don't recognize that. They look at the 26 postures that they were able to glean from ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, 26 postures only, and they say that's black yoga and other stuff is not ours. We close the door to our own power and magic, man, because we think this is like a reflex of self-protection and protecting our identity. You know, we're tired of all these foreign impositions. We want to be rooted in ourselves, our own pristine and completely Afrocentric identity. And so we reject anything we think is not that. So we reject the Indus Valley yoga, not understanding, man, that's your black stuff.
You took it from us. Yes, yes, sir.
It's
We do that
ours.
all the time.
We do it all the time.
Yes, sir.
So I developed this system I call Kamenu. I have some techniques, unique, but also because it's really comprehensive, but also because it's going back to what you said from the beginning, and even what we said about silence. Everything that exists is sound, it's vibration. Like say, if you have light, light is a vibration with particular rate, frequency, direction, right? And there's particular rate, frequency, direction, and speed. That makes light. Then you add another rate or frequency, and then that will make water. You know, you add another, just change the direction, change one other element to just one slight degree, and you get another a different vibration, and that's something else. A star, a grain of sand. But everything that exists is just a combination of rate, frequency, speed, and direction of vibrations. That's it. But vibration, naked vibration, is just vibration. It's like saying naked vibration is just water. Everything else is water with something in it. Kool-Aid, smoothies, champagne, you know? But naked vibration is just vibration, and that's just sound. That's it, right? So everything really is sound without exception. And sound has impact, it has function. So our quest to be whole, and this is really the point, in our quest to be whole, wholeness is wholeness. If you have a fragment in there, you know, then you're not whole. It matters. So when we say something like Kemetic yoga, what do we have there? A hybrid term. On the one hand, we have Kemet. Okay, that's resonant, you know, that's African. But then we got this suffix, which is Eurocentric. So it's a hybrid term. So it's not really expressing the truth of that dynamic, that energy, that effort, that's yoga, because it's discordant. Whereas Kemetu is a term that is completely African, you know? So the resonance in that is whole. And of course it matters. It matters to be as whole as possible. And so that's why I call my discipline Kemetu yoga.
Baba, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Is there any way you could show us, let's see something real basic. For people who are trying to meditate and they say, I don't know, am I breathing right? Am I sitting right? Would you be able to just demonstrate just maybe right in your chair, like a posture and how they would breathe?
Well, I could demonstrate a posture, but in fact, I'm gonna demonstrate something a little crazy, right? And then I'm gonna explain something simple. This is gonna be real quick, but I'm gonna demonstrate something crazy. I hope you can see me. Let me see. I don't know. Why can you please help? The camera, right? Yeah. Let me see. Maybe not. Maybe I don't need help. Ask him if you can see. I don't know. I said ask. Yeah, I am. It's about.
Yep.
Tell me, can you see me?
Yes, sir.
You can see me?
Yep.
Can you see his whole body?
Uh, I see him. Wow. 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 Yeah, that's serious. I don't know why they gave you the nickname Old Man. That ain't no old man right there. Wow.
He gave that to himself.
Wow. And he gets in the full lotus. That's a full lotus?
It is.
What? Wow. How old are you, Baba?
70.
Wow. That's amazing.
Well, you know, man, it's not necessary for everybody to do that, though without fail, everyone I have the pleasure of assisting always goes much further than he or she expects, you know?
Mm.
I mean, there's so much power and magic inside of us. We just need to know how to access it. So yoga is I want to keep the two separate, you know, the racial justice and political struggle separate from self-empowerment. But as you say, man, it's really not possible to do that. There's two sides of one coin. There's something else you want to ask, or should I continue?
I was going to say, Baba, because we're coming to a close. I want people to leave here. First of all, I have to say that was an amazing demonstration to show that, A, you doing this for real. That's clear. Because I'm 57. Most people, I want to say, I don't want to speak for the whole race, but I want to say, I don't know if too many of us can do that, what you just did. And you're 70. So for me, that speaks to, by demonstrating that shows us one of the benefits, yoga, flexibility, and strength. But if you're talking to a young generation, yoga, schmoga, that's a bunch of white stuff. That ain't us, and we're not going to do that. What are some of, if you was just to name 3 or 4 very clear benefits, what would you say, Baba, of doing yoga?
I would say longevity. Like I asked, who wants to grow old and decrepit? Raise your hand. Right?
Right.
Nobody's raising hands, right? Okay, well, look, if you do what you're doing, shorty's not Father's Day, you're gonna get what you're gonna get, you know? But if you do some other stuff, then different outcome, you know? And I tell people also, folks ask, say, how long it takes you to do that? It doesn't matter. Everybody's different. It took me 10 years, could take somebody else 2 months, right? But the thing is that, okay, if something's going to take you 20 years, I can't wait that long. But wait a minute now. 20 years is going to come anyway. So how do you want to find you when it comes?
That's right.
You know? And also, I'm trying to give you the elevators thing here that, man, this is part of your get back. You know, they don't want you to be strong. You know, right. They want you to not do this. That's why they tell you all this stuff, et cetera, right? So pretty much that. I'd like to say in closing, if you have something else to ask, or if you want me to wrap it up now.
Yes, sir. Take it away, Baba. Yes,
okay.
Sir.
So this is what everybody could do. So let me ask you, Baba, where is spirit? Where's spirit?
Where's my spirit?
Where is spirit?
Where is spirit? I'm gonna say my mind.
I agree. I agree, but I would say also it's sitting on your shoulder, it's right in front of the screen. Spirit is everywhere.
Got
Would
you.
you agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, look at this, Bob. Spirit is everywhere. Space also is everywhere. Even in those things that seem solid, they are composed of space. There's not anything. When you get to the molecular subatomic level, everything consists of space. Space is everywhere. So when we realize that spirit is everywhere and space is everywhere, there cannot be two everywheres. Therefore, as we sit here surrounded by space, we are literally surrounded by spirit, not philosophically, but literally. So when we get this awareness, man, we have such an extraordinary force we can actually tap into, because we know, surrounded by space, I'm surrounded by spirit. And what is spirit? But everything, everything, all healing, all power, all possibilities, even those things that are external to ourselves begin here inside, right? So that means that when I breathe, what am I breathing? Not just air, you know? I'm breathing in spirit. It's like, say, if a monkey had a duffel bag with $1 million, what would the monkey do? If it could open a duffel bag, it might build a monkey nest with the $1 million or wipe its monkey butt. For one thing, we know the monkey would not go to the supermarket and buy not one banana. It could even buy shares in a banana plantation. It would be set for life. But the monkey wouldn't do that because the monkey would not realize the value of the money. This is a perfect analogy for us with the breath. We're like a monkey with a duffel bag with $1 million because we don't realize that the power of the breath, you know? So I'm gonna give a technique, but that has to be really emphasized, man, that when we know that we are surrounded by spirit, that we are literally inhaling spirit, it's like we are in the cosmic everything store with rows and rows of inexhaustible everything we might want. Our shopping cart is 20 million miles long. We can fill it up. It never gets filled. Anything we want is right there with the breath, you know? If only we know. Okay, and so the way to make use of this, and a final thing is that this shows that the Lord of the world is a comedian, right? Got a sense of humor. Because look, he, she, or it takes this substance that is the source of all possibilities, right? Surrounds us with it and makes it invisible, so we take it for granted, right? Because it's inexhaustible, right? So that's a funny thing, I think. Okay, so once we know, then we're able to make use of this, and all we have to do is sit as stilly as possible. I know we're about to wind down, so I don't want to be too elaborate with the details. If you just sit with your nose above your navel, you want your spine to be open. The way to open your spine is to reach up to the ceiling with the top of your head, that little baby soft spot. You know, you reach up to the ceiling, past the ceiling, all the way to the roof of creation, with a little baby soft spot. And your spine separates. This is what you want. But you want to tuck your chin a little bit, like so. Because if your head is up, then you close your cervical vertebrae, and you don't want that. You want your energy to flow freely. So you reach up to the top of your head, or with the top of your head, to the roof of creation. The tip of your tongue touches the roof of your mouth. This is called the cosmic bridge. It's in all traditions, martial arts, elsewhere, qigong, wherever else, right? Because it helps the microcosmic orbit, that internal orbit, to just cycle very freely, right? Okay, your nose above your navel. You can just have your hands on your knees if you're sitting on the ground, or on your knees too if you're sitting in a chair. Palms upward, down. There's a whole lot to say about that, but it's not essential at this moment. And all you do is breathe gently, evenly through the nose to the belly without strain. Gently, evenly through the nose to the belly without strain. But with the realization that, by golly gee willikers, I am breathing in the Lord of the world. All power, all healing, all possibility. And you can feel that as you inhale, expand throughout your being. And of course, the adjunct of that is that everything that exists is energy, right? Everything that exists is energy. You know, my voice, you're listening, the thoughts in your head, the ball and chain of memories, your intention, everything is energy. And energy wants to be transformed. I do not know why. If any of your listeners ever find out, please email, text, call me any time of day or night. Let me know why energy wants to do this stuff. I don't know, but it's what it does. It wants to be transformed. Therefore, since we know this, let's help it. Any ache or pain you have in your heart or your body, in your spirit, in your mind, when you breathe in this healing, this freedom, you can literally exhale that toxin, that tension, this mental, physical, psychological, you exhale that away. The more you do this, the stronger you get with it. Enormously powerful exercise. And again, it's a joke because it's so dang simple. It's just air, we think, you know? That's part of the bamboozle, you know?
Well, that was very, Baba. I want to put up some comments from Baba FM. He, in addition to teaching Dr. Amos Wilson's teachings, he does, and I'm pronouncing it wrong, Qigong.
Qigong, yes.
He does that. So this is what he says. I'm so glad you're doing this, Baba. Too many black folk have a fear of yoga because of the Christian church dogging it for many decades.
Yeah.
He also says this art, like Qigong, has African roots. We need to do these practices as part of our liberation, sovereignty, and power. And the reason this stood out to me, particularly that last comment, is because we talk about self-empowerment. You know, we talk about the political, you know, people could quote Malcolm and Asada, and we can do all that. But when it comes to overcoming fear, when it comes to staying focused, laser-like focus, when it comes to those things, we kind of, we struggle. And it seems to me that what you're talking about, yoga in this instance, and I'm sure there's other forms in arts too, helps us to be energized. A lot of us complain of fatigue, our mind being kind of scattered. I was just talking to my mother today. She was talking about that. Our mind, you know, not remembering things. There's a lot going on with us, whether we're younger or older. And it seems like yoga, properly practiced, consistently, can help with things such as memory, posture. You talked about, I was doing what you said in my back, and I took note of the difference in how I sit when I do it and how I sat when you said, and it was a difference.
So I shapsu.
Yeah, so I'm like, this stuff, I want all people who are open to knowledge and learning, but particularly the tribe I come from, to really understand that we have the power to do just about anything, and a lot more power than we think. And sometimes Benjamin Mays, the famous president of Morehouse, and one of Dr. King's key mentors, said a lot of times our problem isn't failure, is that we don't even have a goal, and the goal we have is so low. Our bar is so low. So this lets me know, like you said, we breathing in you, man. You sound like Yoda, brother. I'm gonna tell you straight up. In Star Wars, Yoda was teaching. My favorite scene, he was teaching Luke Skywalker. He said, lift that. It was a spaceship in like a swamp. He said, lift that up. He tried to do it. He couldn't do it. He said, I can't. I don't. He didn't believe. So Yoda said, man, you don't understand. Let me school you in the Force. The Force is all around us. It connects everything. And the way he said it was like, whoa. I was a little kid, like, whoa. What you're talking about, it's the same thing he's tapping into. And you said you're not just breathing in air, you're breathing in the spirit of the Most High of the whole universe. That's very interesting, man. That gives me another way of looking at it when I do this later tonight. That gives me another way of looking at it.
Yeah, I'll be very interested in hearing your experience.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. That's very
Yeah.
powerful.
And
Yeah,
let me
well, say again.
I want to interject very quickly that
Yes.
Yoda and Star Wars, all that plotting was taken from our philosophies. Our
I saw that
philosophies.
on the internet.
Yeah, yeah,
I could believe that.
yeah.
Absolutely. We're the master creators, man. We're the master visionaries. Yeah, absolutely. So then Baba Fam says, yes, these practices can help overcome fear, create clear minds and fit bodies. And thank you for that, Baba Fam. Baba, I want to say this, and I just want you to respond before we leave. I want to hear what you think. I personally believe that one of the greatest acts of Black resistance may not just be protesting. No, we got to protest. Writing petitions, we got to do that. Voting for those who are into that. I think one of the greatest forms of Black resistance is something that does not require us to do anything external, and that is to commit to living. I'm going to live. I'm going to live vibrantly.
Yes.
And one of the ways we do that is through things like what you're telling us, breathing, yoga, going in, talking to the God in me. And, so I think that's very powerful. But what do you think about that statement?
I think exactly what you say, Baba. It goes back to the first thing you said today to me about aligning. If you're in alignment, everything falls in place, happens by itself. So when we do this, when we restore ourselves, it says it's living righteously, man. This is exactly why they do everything they can to corrupt us in every possible way. Because when we are standing in our power, then of course, energy awakens, forces align, unseen hands. And of course, we are more effective in just our general way of being. When we have clarity in our being, everything we do is going to impact something or cause some effect that addresses, everything. I don't know how to say it more. We do if we are good beings, then good happens from us. That's it.
It's like we could connect to the Most High, but we forgot where the switch is. Gods
That's
and
exactly right.
goddesses acting like iggas and itches.
Yeah. Yes. And let me say the flip side of that, man. My wife and I talk about it all this time. She's a sorceress, a Hecate, an activist as well. And we talk about all the time how those people, they're walking in our power. They're doing all of our traditions, following all our traditions. They're eating our foods, wearing our clothes. It's so interesting. They always talk about, oh, you just had grass skirts. Okay, then why you're always wearing African fabrics? Where those come from? Where you get those? You dig it? But it's not just their attire. They're wearing everybody else's ethnic attire. But they're eating our foods. They're doing our practices, our rituals. And we're stuck with their stuff, the hog balls and chitlin stuff, the culture, hog balls and chitlin religions and stuff, we moved away from us, and they identity theft,
For sure. And you see this thing about identity theft, we think about cyber stuff, and if somebody stole your social security, man, they tried to steal our entire culture. The way we process, the way we even look at the world. Like, what I think about, Baba, sometimes? I remember being 10, 15, 18, 20, and having an older person talk to me from our village. And you know what? I was like this.
Right.
Listening. May ask questions. Always listen. Even if they were coming with something, I don't know if I quite agree with that. I listened. And it was a different time. That's not to say we all listen, and that's not to say I followed everything I heard either. But I think one of the things that is challenging for our people today, and I see it obviously a little bit more with our younger people, is that I think our values were different. We saw elders as
Absolutely.
precious commodities. This is an ageist society, Baba. They don't seem to. They look at you like, get out the way. You slow. They running you over. My mother tell me that the men are rushing for the bus seat before she could get to it. She 85.
Ain't that
Like what?
something?
Like so. And they don't. If you don't have money, if you haven't done something for them transactionally, it's like you ain't nobody. You're not. Who are
Yeah,
you? And I think
yeah.
that the yoga, the qigong, all of these things, I think are avenues to reclaim some of the very important principles that we dropped and that are partly responsible for our less than great position right now. It's not just what racists are doing and what other people, is that we kind of, in some respects, dropped some very important things, man, because you were able to save billions of mistakes simply by closing your mouth and listening.
Yeah.
It costs you nothing just to listen. And so that really disturbs me. I this transactional, well, if you didn't buy me this to get this, your word is not important. So now a complete creep and predator, can come up and buy you stuff, right? And now, oh yeah, we got that twisted. I'm hoping that our people watching this now and recorded version will spread this video, will take this empowerment stuff very seriously, like your life depending on it. John Henry Clark told me, Baba, there was a 1987-88 student activist conference at City College. Now, me and the Queen live 3-block walk from City College in Harlem, right? So I was in Syracuse. We came down with my boy. We went to the activist conference. Everybody was there. I mean, all the heavyweights was there. I find myself sitting very close to Dr. Clark. So by this point, it seemed like he was blind. And I asked him, Dr. Clark, told him all the stuff. I'm a student activist, this and that. I read everything and I do this and that. What's your advice for me? I want to, teach our history. And he said, you want to teach our history, son? I said, yes, sir. He said, study it, know it backwards, be able to defend it. And he said, be able to support what you say, like you said earlier, and defend it with your life. Like your life depends on it, because it does. Right? And somehow we have our values, our priorities. It's like, if we just got that together, our situation would change overnight. And that's why some people, who shall not be named, because I don't need to name them, work so feverishly to have us twerking and in TikTok videos, have us our minds absorbed with low vibrational activities and conversations, and have us throwing our money at people who despise us, because they know once we start seeing things right, it's over. It's over.
That's exactly right.
It's crazy.
That's why what you do is so vital. Like you remove the veils. That's exactly what we need.
Well, man, what we need is more Babas like you, man. That you are representing what my queen. She's doing a show called Gray Area for our older, gray area, like gray beard, gray hair, to try to get our older members of the Black nation to see, yo, you're not washed up. You got a lot to offer. You got wisdom and understanding, some type of skill or experience to offer. You could pivot. You could change careers. And you represent, what I want people to see is you're representing that. When you got up there, Baba, and did a daggone, I don't even know what you call that you got up on your elbows and did a full lotus upside down at 70 years old, that makes that point completely. That demonstrates it.
Wow.
That's crazy to me. Like, and you showing us the potential we have to get in that level of shape and flexibility. So, man, my proverbial hat goes off to you, and very thankful. I'm so glad you reached out to me to check out your book, man. There's a whole lot more is gonna come from this than that piece.
No
And
doubt.
I'm very grateful for what you shared with us, Baba. Are there any last words, things you want to say you didn't get to say?
I would just say that what the ancestors teach us, if we persevere, we will not be cheated. To just be united. Unite, unite, unite.
That's it. That's a perfect note on which to end. Baba, Atiba Omar has his own, you have your own yoga school. I know you teach students.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, we appreciate you. Yes, Baba, go ahead, please.
Well, I was going to say, I teach at this temple in Georgia, but I do a lot of private classes. I go to people's houses, their gyms. I taught at somebody's barber shop, you know. So a lot of my stuff is on the road. My teaching's on the road.
That's
I
hot
do,
though.
yeah, I do intend to open up a center.
Hey, that's hot. You know, another time I like to have you on. I'd like to talk to you when we get off of this another time about how people who have disabilities, who recovering from strokes, who have all
Gotcha.
types of issues, how they can get into yoga. You know, maybe not be able
Yeah,
to do everything, but
yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. You know, this is our power, our magic, man. It's just is. It's powerful magic. It's alchemy. You know, if only we just tap into it.
That's right. Well, Baba, thank you again. We got Baba Atiba Omar. I want to thank him and his queen. We heard her in the background helping Baba get on the studio originally. Want to thank her and thank all of you for watching. To my queen, Sister
Yeah,
Brenda, Brother Daryl, Baba Afam. We had I forget the guard that was in earlier. I want to thank him. Every born eternal Lord Allah. Everybody who came out. Please share the video, family. If you haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button right now. It don't cost a dime to support. We trying to get this self-empowerment stuff out to every single African in the country and around the world. You say it's impossible. Who knows? Let's try and see. Let's get it out to everybody. You know, McDonald's and Nike, that's out to every African knows McDonald's and Nike. Let's get this like that. And let's change our
100%.
lives. So we're not
Russia.
talking about them all the time. 90% of our day is what they do and what they did. We talking about, hey, so when you start that new business, when you move into that new home, when you going to travel over to Africa, that's our conversation. Huh? That's how we could change it. So family, thank you all for joining. Peace and blessings. Baba, peace and blessings. We definitely got to have you back. And I would love, man, to hook up. I don't know if I'm going to get to Atlanta or you come up to Harlem or whatever we going to do. But
We're
we
going
got
to
to
do
make that
something.
happen.
No doubt. It's going to.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Baba Fam would like to collaborate with you, so we can set that up. I can give you all exchange information. All right.
Please do. I'm so delighted to hear that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you so much, Baba. We're gonna tune out. I'm gonna hug and kiss on this beautiful queen over here. I'm so proud of her for stepping up into her own light, using her voice, stepping out on center stage and pivoting.
Uh-huh.
Right? She's middle aged like me. She's pivoting. She's going to a whole nother direction, and that's a beautiful thing. You know, that's beautiful. So I'm proud of you, and
Yeah.
I'm proud of everybody watching. Baba, I am signing out. Peace and black power. Peace and
Peace
blessings.
to Washapsu.
Yes, sir.
All right. Peace.